Welcome everyone. I'm Sam Maggi, culinary mentor and chef with Basics Market. Today we'll be making a lemon cheesecake with Gingersnap crust featuring our own organic free-range Gwendolyn's eggs. If you have any questions as we go along, just type them into the Q&A box. Recipes for this class are available on our Basics Market website. Let's get started. So this is a lemon cheesecake with a Gingersnap crust, and this is a lovely cheesecake for the holidays. This is a big cake, and you can really serve a lot of people, or you can just make it for yourself and keep it in the refrigerator and eat it for weeks. It's very delicious, and I'm really excited to be making it with you all tonight. So to start, we're going to make the crust, and this is a Gingersnap crust. Now cheesecakes can, they can be crustless, and they can have any number of, any variety of crust. Cookie crusts are really nice. You're probably familiar with graham cracker crust is a popular one, or shortbread crust. The ginger does give it a really nice little bit of flavor that complements the lemon beautifully. So this is a good way to go with this one. And I'm using these Gingersnaps I found in the store in Basics Market. And these are a really great Gingersnap. They come in a gluten-free version too, which is an excellent, excellent product. And if you're gluten-free, you could do this gluten-free with the gluten-free version. So I can save you some measuring at this point as well. Just use one of these bags. This is a 10-ounce bag of Gingersnaps, and once you pulverize it, it will equal 2 cups of the crumb. So I kind of, to save torturing us all with a lot of grinding, I've done half of them already, but I will demonstrate the technique of pulverization. So I have the other half of my Gingersnaps here, and they're going right in the deal. So here we go. This is a food processor. You could also use a hammer, and you could use a rolling pin or a mallet, or you could run over them with your car. I don't know, all sorts of things. But this is a handy device. So it's going to be a little bit noisy for a second. And so we're looking just for this really nice kind of sandy crumb. So good, you want to use your pulse a little bit, pulse them up. Right. So it doesn't take much, and it is a I would recommend doing it in kind of 2 batches like that, because it'll go a lot quicker. If you put them all in at once, you struggle a little bit. Well, actually, I'm gonna do a couple more pulses because they're still a bit grainy there. So let that ride. So while that's going, I have some butter melted. So I have 6 tablespoons of butter. And of course, I'm using our own Basics brand of butter, Lulabelle's. Really a nice butter. Very tasty and very fresh. Good. Now there. Got it. All right. So now we're there. So here's our 2 cups of crumbs. And then this is the springform cake pan that we'll be making the cheesecake in. And you want one, for this recipe, you'll want one with a nice pie side. This is a 3-inch side. Sometimes they're like this, and I actually did bake, I think my demonstration cheesecake, I only had this available. And so it was I had a little extra filling. And if you only have a smaller one and you do have extra filling, you can always bake off just little custards with the filling. That's really nice too. But if you have a nice deep springform pan, that's perfect. So 3 inches, good. Okay, back to this crust. So we got our crumbs, we got our melted butter, 6 tablespoons. Now I'm just going to use a wooden spoon and mix that butter into the crumbs. And we just want to get all that nice and moistened up so it sticks together. And yeah, the cheesecake first came about in ancient Greece as our first records of cheesecakes. And in Greece, they were making cheese from, like, there's evidence of cheese making from 2000 BC and onwards. And soon after, they were making cheesecakes. And the original cheesecakes were simply cheese, honey, a little bit of flour, all mixed together and baked. And it was a staple at the Olympic Games. It was served at the very first Olympic game. And also, the ancient Greeks had a tradition of serving cheesecake at weddings, and that was the forerunner of today's wedding cake. So if you have a cheesecake at a wedding, you're tying into the very first wedding cakes. All right, so now with this crust, we're going to go ahead and press it into our pan. So I'm just going to sprinkle it all in there. And at this point, it's kind of a loose deal. I'm just going to make sure the bottom is covered in it. And I should mention that here I've sprayed, you can spray or butter your springform pan. Even if it's non-stick, it's a good idea just to make sure that everything comes out in the end. So now for the pressing. And so this is where you can customize your cheesecake. If you like that really delicious corner that occurs, you can leave that corner kind of thick as and this is where you would do that with your pressing. Or you can go up the side as high as you like. You can leave it thick, or you can get it as thin as you can. I'll just go, I just do what I can with this. Like when I get tired of pressing, I will stop. It's my method. But you do one kind of trick is just to push the crumbs towards the edges, and then you can kind of see that it will rise up the edge a bit. And it's not all going to be precise, but that's sort of one of the beauties of the cheesecake is it's an imperfect art, and it's beautiful in that way. It's always delicious, and it's always a little different. And there are so many sorts of cheesecakes all over the world. In the Philippines, they make a cheesecake and incorporate purple yams, and then it has a beautiful purple color. But they come in all shapes and sizes. So after the Romans conquered Greece, they had adopted a lot of Greek culture, and one of the things they adopted was the cheesecake. And like with so many foods that come out of the West, the Romans were responsible for spreading the cheesecake all over Europe. And what the Romans introduced to the cheesecake was the egg. And they added the egg to this basic Greek recipe of the honey, the cheese, and the flour all mixed together. They threw an egg in there, and then suddenly it's leavened a little bit. And also nutritious. Now, the reason the cheesecake would be served at, say, a festival like a wedding or at the Olympic Games is because it's so nutritious, and it was thought of as kind of a power food. And so with these festive events where you need a lot of energy, and you're either partying or expending yourself physically in the games, it's a good source of food. And I think we're still kind of drawn to these foods, powerhouse foods in the wintertime, when we're trying to get our reserves of energy going. Anyway, so there we go. That's it. That's where I'm going to end the crust for today. And I got up the side a bit. I think it looks kind of cool when you have it halfway up and you have some exposed cheesecake at the top. But that again, it's entirely up to you. And of course, that corner where the cookie crumb is a little thicker is one of my favorite parts of the cheesecake. So if you like that, you can really, leave that kind of thick. Okay, so for our next trick, we're going to blend a whole bunch of white things together and hope for the best, right? So I've got cream cheese. So cream cheese, well, if we're going to continue, let's continue our history on this cheesecake. So the Romans got the cheesecake around Europe, and we see the cheesecake pop up in written form again in the first English cookbook, in a British cookbook. And there are 2 recipes for cheesecake in that cookbook, and that's where the crust is introduced. And there was in France, I'm not sure, in either France or Italy, there was a dispute when the crust started going into the cheesecake because I think it was France, that the patisseries said, that's our territory, you can't put that under a cheesecake. And then, anyway, that's it. Or you know what, I'm thinking of pate. Sorry, I've been studying pate at the same time. But that's an interesting thing about pate. Entirely different subject, excuse me. But anyway, in England, they got the crust going. And then we started playing around with the different sorts of crusts. But the cream cheese is an American addition to the deal. And we will be whipping the cream cheese. So we have 3.5 blocks of cream cheese. These are just the regular old 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese. We're going to go ahead and put 3 of those. Now these are at room temperature. You want your eggs and your cream cheese and your sour cream at room temperature. And this is so that it will all swirl together without creating a lot of lumps. And it's just better for mixing. Everything just really gels on a molecular level. So that's a good thing. This is, for me, this is a pretty messy project. And a spatula is a good deal here. So first we're going to go the sugar and the cream cheese together. So I'm gonna start, I think, just with half the sugar, kind of get things rolling. And I'm using a whisk attachment to this KitchenAid. You could also do this with a hand blender, but really you kind of need some sort of electric mixer is best for this, because you really gotta whip it up really good, okay? So we incorporated our first bit of sugar, and now let's go for the rest. There we go. And just get that in there. And I also have the salt already in there, so it's just a pinch of salt, which is 1/8 of a teaspoon, which is half of a 1/4 teaspoon. And so it's just a little bit of salt. And I put that in with my sugar already. So you want to whisk the whipped cream until it gets nice and light and fluffy. And with a deep bowl mixer like this, like my mixer at home, it's not so large, so I don't really have so much trouble, but you always want to kind of scrape down the sides. In one of these real deep deals, you definitely have to scrape a lot because some of the cream cheese will want to stick to the bottom and the sides. So you just got to get that stuff off. So cream cheese was invented in New York State in 1872 by a fellow who was trying to figure out how to make Neufchtel cheese, the French soft cheese, and he stumbled upon this formula, which was cream cheese, and that changed cheesecake, the trajectory of cheesecake forever. And then and then we get our New York cheesecake coming around in the 1900s. And credit for the New York style cheesecake is given to the same fellow who invented the Reuben sandwich, Arnold Reuben. And he took credit for cheesecake also anyway. But like, legend has it. Well, all kinds of cheeses can be used for cheesecake, and before the advent of cream cheese, there like cottage cheese was used a lot. All right, so we got our cream cheese in there, and I think the next thing we're going to add is our eggs. So I'm using the beautiful Gwendolyn's eggs. Now these are real beauts. You can see here they're laid right here in the Willamette Valley by happy chickens, just doing their thing, eating organic feed and eating the grasses and all that stuff, and enjoying the weather. And we've got some cream cheese trapped in the whisk cage here, and so we really got to get that going. I think once the eggs hit it, though, that'll help get that out. So the eggs one at a time. So what I've done is I like to just crack them into one of these liquid measuring cups. And then the egg, pretty much one egg is going to pop out with its yolk because the white likes to hang out with the yolk. So we're just going to go ahead and put one egg at a time. So there goes one. Here we go to laughing. Here goes two. Laughing. There's the third. Four. And the five. All right, and again, this is a good time to scrape your sides of your mixer. Get all that chunky stuff down. Looks like we've got the cage, the whisk cage cleared for takeoff. And one more. This is where the cheesecake comes right out, dumps on your face. Okay, so there's that. Now we're going to add the sour cream, lemon zest, and lemon juice. So let's go ahead and zest up the lemon. So lemon zest is simply the rind of the lemon, the skin of the lemon, the peel. Anyway, it's that grated. So you can use a cheese grater, or if you have a nice fancy zester like this, that's cool. And what I'm going to do is zest. Usually this will be about one lemon will get you there. And of course, depending upon the size of the lemon. So we'll go ahead and zest it up. Oh, and while this is happening, I should be baking my crust. Let's go ahead and get that going. Sorry about that. Yeah, so while you're mixing your Well, you are mixing up your filling. You can make the crust. The crust will take about 10 minutes. And so I have the oven going at 350, and it'll take about 10 minutes to get that crust. You just want it to set. I mean, the cookies are already cooked and everything. It's just a matter of getting that set. And when you go in to put your cheesecake into the oven, you want it not quite in the exact center, but a little bit lower, like next rung down, because you don't want that intense heat from your heating element hitting the top. The thing about cheesecake is you're always trying to avoid the cracks, and you know, cracks might happen, and it's not the end of the world. That's why we have things like a lovely strawberry rhubarb sauce to put on it. And we do have a recipe for that on our website. Strawberry rhubarb sauce during the rhubarb season is a great addition to this cheesecake. Yes, we have a question.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify which attachment you're using and why the whisk attachment.
All right. The question is, what attachment are we using on the KitchenAid for the cheesecake? And I'm using the whisk attachment. And I like the whisk because it's going to aerate. It's going to aerate the filling, and it's really going to break down that cream cheese and integrate it with the other ingredients. Okay, so I am looking for a tablespoon and 2 teaspoons of zest. So here's my tablespoon and 2 teaspoons. So we'll probably get off the rest of this. Yeah, the whisk is what I like, because what it's going to do is it's just going to fluff it up. And if you're using, like, say, a paddle mixer, it's going to be more like condensing it. But you know what? That would work if it also, I think, if that's all you have. The main thing is just to kind of whack it around really good. And again, that's why, and the hand mixer also would be great with little whiskey guys. Okay, so it was exactly one lemon's worth of zest, so that's great. And now for the juice. So we're gonna go for a tablespoon and half a teaspoon of juice. And this is a very specific amount, and that's good because baking is a science. Yes, we have another question.
He wants to know, could you do this as a blender?
The question is, can you do this in a blender? And my answer is, yeah, why don't you try it and then let me know. I think so. I think if you had a big enough blender, I mean, I have not attempted that. And that'd be an interesting experiment. I think if you had a nice big blender, and I think the trouble you might run into with the blender is equal mixing. Yet, if you did it a bit at a time, and then you could even use a smaller blender, I guess, if you did like just some of the ingredients a little bit at a time, yeah, why not? Do it in a blender. Yeah, that I had. I think you could do that. You know, the wonderful thing about cooking is we can always figure out a way to get it done, right? And just adapt to our situations. And yeah, that sounds neat. Okay, so there's the lemon juice. Move that around a little bit. And then we're going to add the sour cream. Now, sour cream is an addition that was is credited to the city of Chicago, and the Chicago style cheesecake is known for having the addition of sour cream. And what sour cream does is it adds a lovely silkiness, smoothness, and beautiful flavor to the mix. So we have another question.
Don't use zest, can you use the lemon juice?
the question is, if you don't use zest, can you increase the lemon juice? And I would not increase the lemon juice. I think you'd be okay without the zest. The zest is just going to give it a little more of an intense lemon flavor. But if you add more juice, you're kind of messing with the chemistry of the ratio of liquid in there, and you don't really want to do that. So I'd stick with the juice. If you don't have zest, that's going to be fine. The zest just kicks that lemon flavor up a notch. All right, now with the sour cream is being incorporated, I'm going to check on the crust. Right, yes.
Several people have asked about seeing the whole crust and how high it comes up. And
Oh, okay. So we had some comments, and for you, those of you who are interested in seeing how this crust looks, it is difficult in this very deep pan. But again, the deep pan is nice for the reason of that hopefully all our filling is going to fit in here. You can see I have it coming up about halfway up this pan. When I did it in this little guy, I mean, with the one that I'm going to unveil, and by little I just mean this is like just a wee bit. This is probably a 2-inch spring form. I could get the crust higher up the sides. Now, if you wanted more crust, you'd simply increase the amount of cookies and the amount of butter, and then you could have the crust go all the way up, whatever. But again, I kind of like that look of the halfway up crust. Yes, another question.
could you use yogurt instead of sour cream?
The question is, can you use yogurt instead of sour cream? And I would say sure. Again, cheesecake, it's such a fascinating dish because there's just an infinite variety. And as far as cheese, I mean, now in Greece, like in a traditional Greek cheesecake, we'll use like feta or different sorts of cheeses, and you can do like a cottage cheese, and you could use yogurt, sure, in place of sour cream. I'd recommend using like a Greek yogurt, like a nice thick one. But I think you could do that just fine, and it'd be nice and tangy. And yeah, sure. Yeah, another question.
Someone wanted to know if they could use orange juice and orange zest instead of lemon.
The question is, someone was wondering about orange juice and orange zest instead of a lemon, and I would say, yeah, that sounds neat. You can flavor your concoction here really any way you want. I mean, those citrus flavors. You could put a tiny touch of like an extract. Again, you don't want to mess too much with that liquid ratio, but just like a little bit, half teaspoon of something won't hurt too much, like vanilla, orange extract, what have you. Now, I don't make a whole ton of cheesecakes lately, but I did for a while when I was starting out cooking. I had a little business selling chocolate peanut butter cheesecakes. I stumbled upon this method of chocolate and peanut butter cheesecakes, and I knew some people who had a health food store, and I said, hey, can I sell these cheesecakes out of your health food store? And they said, yeah. So I had these cheesecakes in the deli case at a health food store, and it was doing great business. You wouldn't believe how many people bought chocolate peanut butter cheesecakes out of when they went in for vitamins or something. And then it came to a grinding halt, though, when an irate customer said, hey, you can't sell cheesecakes in the health food market. And anyway, but it was a good business for a few weeks. But I knew a few of those cheesecakes. But anyway, I'm just saying you can put all kinds of stuff into a cheesecake. And again, you just want to kind of watch your balance, like as far as liquid solids, eggs, and all this. Now, this cheesecake is a really big cheesecake. This is going to make a nice tall one. And so let's have a look here. So we've got our deal now. Ideally, if we weren't doing a class, I'd let this cool longer. It's still a bit more, but for the sake of the class, we're just going to go ahead and show the pour in to the crust here. So again, the spatula will come in handy. I'm going to grab a clean one. And here's my crust prepared pan. It's greased a little bit. Oh yeah, first let's talk about this a little bit. The baking, right? So the oven's at 350. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use some foil. And we're going to use a bit of plastic wrap. Now, the reason for this is this is baked in a water bath. And a water bath, even like if you're following you come across a cheesecake recipe that doesn't recommend a water bath, I'd always recommend a water bath. But what happens is not, even if a springform pan is supposed to be waterproof, it might not be. It might have a little spot where water can get in, and then that will wreck your crust. So what you want to do is make this deal watertight. And in order to do that, we're going to create a barrier for the water. And so what cooking in a water bath does is you get a really nice even distribution of gentle heat. And again, we're trying to prevent cracking on top of the cheesecake. And so if it heats too quickly, it's going to seize up, and then that's where you're going to get the cracks. So the water bath keeps everything nice and gentle. And so you want a nice big roasting pan, or you can cook your cheesecake in a nice big skillet. If you have a big skillet that will go around, you just want some space around the edge here so that the water will fill in and gently cook the custard, basically. And then, so to create a watertight vessel, you can use plastic wrap, and you want to simply wrap that around the base of your springform pan, and then use foil to wrap around the plastic. And see where I'm at here with the heat, because I don't want to, if I am going in hot, so it's cool enough. So what you want to do is make sure to go around the seam. Okay, so you can see how I'm covering all the area where the water might get in. Okay, so just up the side a little bit with the plastic wrap, and then I'll finish with the foil. And we're just going to get that foil all nice and wrapped around there. Now, another way to do this, which is great if you have this capability, is you can put your, and it wouldn't work so great with, say, this sort of a springform that has a wide base like this, but with a springform that is smooth like this, you can drop this right into a cake pan that fits. Like, so this is a 9-inch, like a 10-inch cake, round cake pan. Drop that in there, and then put that in the water bath, and that takes care of any water getting into this guy. And that's a really great way to go if you have that equipment. Otherwise, this foil plastic wrap method works great. Okay, so of course we'll need water and I have some. And so what we're going to do with the water is we're going to go ahead and we're going to come up about 1 inch. But first, let's go ahead and put our filling in. Now it's cooled down quite a bit, so that's nice. So let's put the filling in. And yeah, this filling fits beautifully in the 3-inch tall spring form. And as I mentioned before, I only had access to the 2-inch spring form when I made my demo cake earlier. And so I had some leftover filling, and I just baked that off as like a custard in a little custard cup, and it was quite nice. It was just a little crustless cheesecake. And of course, that cooks a lot quicker. We have a question. Yes.
Russell just wants to find out if the water's hot when you add it. What temperature your boundary water is?
Well, this water is just sort of room temperature. I don't feel it needs to be hot, but I have colleagues who like to put in hot water, and I think that it's not a bad idea if you have access to hot water and you can, enough to fill it up. Go for it. It'll get it going that much faster, but it can be room temperature. I wouldn't use like ice cold water, but warm water is a good call here. Warm to hot. Anywhere from room temperature to hot is great. Yes, another question.
Question about the plastic wrap and whether it melts.
Yeah, there's a question about whether the plastic wrap melts. No, it won't melt because again, you have this really gentle heat with the water there. So it's not going to, if plastic wrap isn't exposed to direct heat, it will be safe in here. You can forego the plastic wrap and just take your chances with just the foil, and that can work fine. And I've done that, and I've been okay. The plastic wrap is definitely a safeguard, and it will ensure that the water doesn't get in there. And again, that cake pan idea is just, I think, fantastic. If you have a secondary pan to put your spring form into, that's a good way to go. With that, you just want to make sure it's really close fit into the edge here, so that the water will still do its work on the outside of your pan. But I think that's a pretty neat way to go. Okay, so here we go. We've got our water coming up about 1 inch here, and then we just put this into the oven. Get it a bake. And so this will take up to an hour and a half usually to cook this nice thick cheesecake. Yeah, we have another question.
Sarah wants to, if you have to use the water bath, will it work if you can do it?
Sarah would like to know if you have to use the water bath. And yes, you have to use the water bath. No. And you can do what you like. The water bath is a nice method, and I mean, like I mentioned earlier, even if a recipe said don't use a water bath for this cheesecake or doesn't mention the water bath, I probably would still water bath the cheesecake because it is such a good method and does help with the cracking. Because also, besides the gentle heat, it creates a humid environment in the oven. And that humidity really helps gently cook the cheesecake. But yeah, you could try it for sure. You could, you don't have to use the water bath. And I have made many cheesecakes without a water bath. But I feel the water bath is a really nice way to go. Right, it's in the oven. And it looks like we have another question. Yes.
You want to make individual servings and ramekins, how long do they put? Do you have to change the?
The question is, can you make individual servings in ramekins? And if you bake them, do you need to change the baking temperature? And you don't need to change the temperature. You can leave the temperature at 350. So like when I have my little bit of excess filling for when I use this size springform, I got two kind of nice ramekins like this out of it left over, and I just popped those in the oven. And I did put them in a little water bath, and they cook. They just cook quicker, but it's the same temperature. But they'll probably be done in 20 minutes or so. So just when it sets, so the cheesecake is ready when it sets, and you know you're bound to you'll probably get a little color on it, and that's all right. A little color is okay here because it is such a thick cheesecake. You know, you're bound to get a bit of color on it, and but it's ready when it's set around the edges. It's going to puff up, and it's going to be a little bit jiggly, but it will be kind of I want to say solid jiggle, which sounds odd, but sort of a uniform jiggle, not like a liquid jiggle. It's set, but it's going to have some movement. And then as it cools, it's just going to kind of condense a little bit and set up as it cools. So let's go ahead and get to that stage, right? Where let's pretend that it's been an hour and a half. And to check it, you do not want to poke it with a knife or anything like that, because that's going to mess with it can cause cracking. Everything about cheesecake, as you start to look at it, is about the cracks, right? And trying to avoid those. But the cracking does occur. Let me grab a finished cheesecake. Let's see. All right, the magic of television, am I right? So here you can see some of that color that did occur. And this has been cooled now overnight. So what you want to do is pull your cheesecake out of the oven, put it on a rack, like a cooling rack, and let it cool for at least 2 hours, just at room temperature like that. But when it comes out of the oven, you can go ahead and run a knife or a nice thin spatula like this. Just run that all around the edges while it's still warm. Let it cool about 10 minutes. Okay, let it cool about 10 minutes, and then run the spatula around. And so it's still semi-warm like that. That'll loosen that up from your springform. So when you open up the springform, hopefully your crust will not go away with the pan, the side of the pan. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So with the springform, you're going to pop it up from the bottom. Try not to fall into the cheesecake. And there we go. So here's the cheesecake, and here's that kind of part way up sort of crust. And you'll notice I do have some lighter spots here. And what happened to me is as I baked this one, I accidentally knocked a couple of holes on top as it was finishing. And because I was fiddling with it, which you shouldn't do, don't fiddle with the cheesecake while it's cooking. Take it from me. So I had just that a little bit. So I used some of my extra filling, and I filled it in. And so it baked nicely, like that is set, but it didn't color. So I have a kind of a cool effect there, right? Of bicolored. Now, one kind of fun thing you can do with a cheesecake too is you can swirl in like a little bit of jam or a preserve something, or a a thick syrup. Again, you want to watch your liquid ratio, but a little bit, or a chocolate swirl, and you just swirl that in, and you can marble it. You can do all kinds of fun stuff. With that peanut butter chocolate cheesecake, I used to kind of do like a spider web with chocolate, with a toothpick. Well, it was wet. Well, the filling, before it went in the oven. And so you can do a lot of fun designs on top. And I'm not going to say that this is a fun design, but it was a design that happened, and it's still going to taste great. And if something like this happens to you, there's always the sauce, and there's like some cheesecakes have a nice like sour cream layer on top, and then that just takes care of all of this and smooths it all out. And that's something you can do. But what I did tonight is I made just a simple strawberry compote. And so I took some strawberries. So if you had like, say, half a pound of strawberries, 1/8 a cup of sugar, and a half a tablespoon of lemon juice. So lemon juice, sugar, and strawberries. Put them in a pot and cook them over medium heat until they thicken up. And about 10-15 minutes. You get basically a strawberry preserve or a sauce, and you can take it to thick or leave it loose if you want. And then that's just a nice drizzle. And so you can do that with blueberries, is a beautiful thing to add to a cheesecake. You can even layer fruit right on top of the cheesecake. So let's get to cutting. So for cutting, it's nice to have a hot knife. So I have some water, which I heated in a kettle. And I'm going to go ahead and pour that in there. And I'm just going to heat up the blade of this knife. And it'll just make it easier to cut through the cheesecake. And, this is a pretty good trick for any sort of cake. Heat up the blade of the knife, even regular cake works really well. And I think I have a plate here that I guess I'm supposed to taste this. So I'm going to start by eating these parts that look a little discolored, or they're not colored. They're not a beautiful golden brown. Okay, so there's my knife, and you just want to wipe off the excess water. It's nice and hot, so I'm going to go ahead and pull straight through the middle. I'm making some marks at this point, and then I'm going to begin. And let's see what we're looking at. Let's do a nice big piece of this. All right, so this, if I cut it in this style, I do 8 big pieces this size. And you can see that knife just melts right through the cheesecake. Now, if you're doing like a fancy service with this, you can take the whole cheesecake off of the bottom of the spring form and put it onto a platter, something like that. But one of the beautiful things about the spring form is you have that built-in platter. If you're just cutting it and then plating it, and it just works just fine. And so as always, the first slice is a little bit rough, but not too terrible. And there you have it. You can catch it up a little bit. Yeah, it looks lovely, right? So there is the cheesecake. As you can see, it's as big as my head. A slice of cheesecake. All right. So then, we'll drizzle some of our strawberry stuff, maybe a little on the plate. And if you had, oh, wait a minute, I was going to say, if you had fresh strawberries, I have some fresh strawberries. In this time of year, of course, strawberries are not in season. You can get them, and they're a little bit expensive though, right? So, you can use frozen fruit for your cheesecake sauce making, and it works great. And sometimes frozen fruit this time of year is a pretty good way to go, because often the frozen fruit will be harvested at the peak of the season when there's an excess of fruit and it's all ripe and then frozen, so you'll get a really nice product that way. But fresh is good, and it's pretty to put actual fresh berries on there or around it. Again, blueberries would work really nice with this. And frozen blueberries are very useful as well. Okay, so are there any further questions before we wrap this up? All right, well, great. It's been a real pleasure. Oh, now let me taste it, right? What am I doing? Too much talking and not enough eating. So it looks like it's set up good or well. And this is a really fluffy cheesecake. It's really light. And it's really fabulous. Lots of great lemon flavor, beautiful texture. Just it's like eating a lemon cloud. So I hope you're making this, you made this along with me tonight, or you're going to make it really soon. Please check out all our recipes at the basics.com website, and also check out our stores and our upcoming classes. So we've got the next class that I'm doing is on the 22nd, and it's going to be about winter salads. So that we're going to do some great winter salads. So you can eat a big bowl of salad and then eat a whole cheesecake, something like that, and it will all balance out. And then there'll be a new year and you'll forget all about it. Okay, and in our store locations, we're around the Portland area. We have 4 locations. Come to our markets, shop the beautiful markets. Again, looking for our products like these lovely fresh Gwendolyn's eggs that we use in the cheesecake here. They're from hens that live right here in the Willamette Valley, and they're always fresh and delicious and very useful. So thanks again for joining me this evening, and I hope all your cheesecake dreams come true. Happy cooking.